Hey guys, welcome back to NFL Trading Room. Today we're going to dive right back into our summer scouting series. Today we're diving into interior offensive line. We did offensive tackles last episode. We're going to keep the trench talk going. We're going to hop over to the interior guys, cover the guards and centers. Just loop them into one episode because it would be there's not really enough at either position to talk only guards or only centers. It's just kind of easier to loop them in. As a whole, we'll touch on both. Sorry for the delay in this one, totally on me, by the way. This was coming out a little bit later than our normal schedule. I had something take me out of town immediately, not Ben's fault at all. And I just was away from my setup. But it's nice to get a break from the film sometimes. You kind of burn yourself out getting just nonstop film. So I got a couple of days break back, ready to dive back into all this film. I'm excited to talk about some more offensive line play. And overall, the class, I'd heard really good things about the centers specifically. So I came in with kind of high expectations for the center class. I was a little bit disappointed with that. Pleasantly surprised with a couple of guys, but on a general basis, I came away with no first-round grades. So I'm not super high on this class overall, but again, guys will take leaps. We're still in the summer, very, very early stages of all the draft evaluation process. But Ben, how you doing? How you feeling about this class overall?
I'm doing great. I was a little bit higher on the class than you, but still not up to where I thought it would be. I do have a first round grade that we'll talk about later. But I feel like a lot of my first round grades for summer scouting is more projection based. But yeah, love talking offensive line. Can't wait to get into this one.
Exactly. There we go. So I guess without further ado, we'll quit stalling and just hop straight into our honorable mentions. So our first one, I guess we'll hop over to the Utah guard. We just finished with a lot of Utah talk last week. And I think you specifically mentioned it to me, I think, because he popped watching both the tackles we talked about, Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu. Somebody on the interior, it's Tanoa Togiai, I believe is how you say it. 73, number 73, the guard on the interior. A guy that I had not heard mentioned by anybody until Ben mentioned him when we were watching Utah. Not a guy that's very mainstream at all right now. But you turn on the tape, I see the appeal because there are some really the flashes are fun when he's on. He's putting somebody in the turf. He's really, really strong, really, really athletic, I thought. But the technique is kind of all over the place. Really, really sloppy hand placement. I thought the hands could use a lot of work, hand usage and hand placement. The punch wasn't awesome. Very, very long for an interior guy, and that's because he's 6'6", I think. And that was kind of the killer for me with him. Is not only is he 6'6", the leverage is also kind of a disaster. He's just playing straight up all the time, and that will kill you on the interior. Leverage issues are bad outside, but they are deal breaker bad on the interior. Because you run into an Aeneas Peebles, any 6'3", 6'2" defensive tackle who's really going to get under your rib cage, you're going to get pushed into your QB's lap, no matter how strong you are. Because he's, Togi has a perfect example. He's really, really strong, really, really strong athletic player. But you'll see guys that are half as athletic as him, half as strong as him, probably don't bench, a quarter of what he benches. But you get under his pads, and none of it really matters. I see the tools. If you can improve the leverage and clean up some of the technique, it's pretty high ceiling there to me, I think. But generally, it seems like he's kind of a blank slate to me right now, and there's the work is cut out for him to really develop in that Utah offensive line room. Ben, how'd you come away with him?
Yeah, I had him as my interior offensive line 7. Like you said, the highs are really high, but got to clean up the technique. I thought the footwork and pass pro also needs work. But when the hands land, super powerful, really good athlete. Utah didn't get him on the move a lot, but I thought he was a really good reach blocker when they were running outside zone. I would like to see his grip strength improve more. Like I said, he's powerful when his hands do land, but he falls off blocks too easily. But a guy that's a good athlete, really long on the interior. Again, like you said, plays high a lot. Gonna have to work on that leverage. It was really a issue we talked about with the whole left side of that Utah offensive line. Got to work on your leverage and stay low. But he's really strong, really athletic. Guy that could definitely take a jump in this class. May even be a guy that goes back because I believe he's a redshirt junior. I did like some of what I saw.
Yeah, for sure. It's always fun when you kind of notice peripherally guys that you don't really, not big names in the mainstream media right now, but you see some guys that have the tools to potentially be somebody you can be kind of in early on them. Jumping into our first guard, was at USC, Emmanuel Pregnon, now transferred to Oregon. And Oregon just cleaned up the offensive line transfer portal, it seems like. Getting Isaiah World, Emmanuel Pregnon, they're just rebuilding that entire offensive line there for this next season. And overall, I came away pretty impressed with Pregnon. He was a guy that he's a semi-big name, but I haven't heard any major expectations with him. But you turn on the tape, and I saw a guy that was really athletic, too. I was really impressed by the foot speed. The mirror was really impressive. You never saw him lose to an inside move. Just a good job keeping his feet moving. The play strength issues did worry me with him. I think he's probably a guy that's on the weaker side. The anchor was shaky at best. You'd see him get bull rushed. And just general, not a lot of pop, especially first level pop as a run blocker. You don't really see him move guys off the ball. I thought the technique was fine. There's some places you could clean up, but I wouldn't call it a major issue. But to me, the biggest thing that pops off to me, and our guest from last episode, Parker Blake, that's always something he preaches, is demeanor in offensive line. That's one of the most important things. You want guys that are mean up front. And just there's clear effort there on tape. And that's might have been the best out of this whole group that we watched, honestly, for me. Is Praedon. You can just tell he's violent and he has a lot of effort on each snap. This is a guy that cares like every single rep. There's just so much. He just reeks of effort. So that's something that's you're going to bet on a guy like that. Like that gives you things to be hopeful about with him. So if you can get him under a squat rack and improve that core strength, just the lower body strength in general, get him some more play strength. He's got a lot of the tools and like I said, the demeanor that really impresses me. And I think you were also pretty high on him as well. He's my 7. I don't remember if I already said that. My interior offensive line 7. Ben, how do you come away on him?
Yeah, he was the first guy out of my top 5. Wasn't as he's a round grade below my 5, but I did like a lot of what I saw. I don't want to say that I grade on a curve, but if I see you perform well against 2 top 15 picks and hold your own, I'm going to take that into account. And I thought he held up well against Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. I think one of the main things that I struggled with, especially in the run game, was it seems like he was more of a puncher and less of a guy that latched on. That can help sometimes, if you're a guy that's not as athletic, you'll get a lot of holding calls if you latch on instead of punch. But for a guy that's this athletic, I'd like to see him latch on because he can move his feet and stick with the defender in those situations. White hot motor, maybe the best motor of anybody in this group. I do think sometimes he got a little over aggressive with his punch and pass pro, got out over his skis. But I'll bet on the traits all day long with the guy that gives effort. Pretty good size, and we talked about it last week, like you said, with Parker, specifically with Isaiah World getting up into that Oregon nutrition program,
Right.
Plus getting with Oregon's offensive line coach that always does good things up there. I think the same applies to Emmanuel Pringon. The nutrition staff isn't as big of a jump from USC to Oregon as it was from Nevada to Oregon, but I do think it is a jump because Oregon's got things humming up there. But yeah, I can't wait to see what he does this season.
For sure. Yeah, he's a fun one that really has a high ceiling. 'Cause you're looking, you always look for ceiling, at least me. I think you're a little bit of a traits guy as well, too, but I've kind of always preached ceiling. That's something I believe in as an evaluator, but it's kind of even more relevant when you're doing summer scouting because not only are you projecting the jump and projecting the traits from the college level to the NFL level, but you're also, using the traits to project, a jump over one more season in college. I think that's going to continue to develop over their time in college. So it's kind of even more of a thing to keep an eye out for in summer scouting. But yeah, I guess we'll move straight into our last honorable mention, and this is my 6, my first one out, and that's Chase Basantis, the offensive lineman out of Texas A&M. And Chase Basantis is a guy I've been excited to watch for a while because all the way back in 2023, really my first time like dipping my toes into draft evaluation, I was watching. James Pierce was still a really big name in 2023. I was watching him, and he kind of ran the table in the SEC. He was destroying off the tackles everywhere. Until that A&M game, Chase Basantis was the first guy that actually was able to handle his explosiveness and his power. So he was a guy that I jotted down back then. And of course, that was when he's a tackle. He's now moved to the inside. He's a guard now at A&M. But he's a guy that's been on my radar for a while. And I'm not quite as high on him as I thought I would be. Like I say, he's a day 3 guy to me right now. Early day 3, but still day 3. But he is, still my 6, my first one out of my top 5. And I think he's another one, kind of what we mentioned with like Austin Barber and a couple of guys in the last episode, where they're just kind of boring, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Or not the worst thing, I should say. You don't really ever want tape to be boring, but there's worse things. With him, I think he's really strong. You still see the anchor that you saw, that I noticed all the way back in 23 with James Pierce. That's still a premier part of his game. He's not ever going to lose through his chest. He's got a really strong really strong base and pass protection. Really strong legs. The athletic limitations are rough. They asked him to get to the second level quite a bit, and it wasn't really something he's great at. Not a guy you want in space a whole lot, I thought. The punch, I thought there was some pop on a pretty decent basis. Like again, he's a really strong player, but for a guy that's as strong like taking hits as he is, I don't think he does a great job dishing them out. For a guy that's as strong as he is anchor-wise, you don't see a lot of push off the ball as a run blocker. To me, I thought there was some major room for improvement there as far as just being a people mover off the line of scrimmage. But again, I still think he's a guy that's very, very sound technically and just a really high floor guard to me. So yeah, he's an early day 3 guy to me in my 6 right now. But Ben, how'd you come away on him?
Yeah, Basantis was my 8. You could definitely see the tackle background in a lot of the pass pro reps. You don't really see a snatch trap from interior guys too often. He broke it out a few times. I thought he'd be a more consistent mover in the run game. There were flashes where it kind of made your eyes go wide. Like there was a rep against Florida where he takes 450-pound Desmond Watson and moves him about 5 yards back.
Yeah.
But then there were other times where I think it was against South Carolina where TJ Sanders is able to get under his pads and drive him back. I do think he's a really good puller. I thought he was a little bit more athletic than what you thought of him, but I don't think he's some super athlete. I can understand why they moved him into the interior. The range probably was a bit of a concern on the outside. Again, like Pregnon, I think he needs to add grip strength. I thought he fell off blocks too often. I thought the reaction in pass pro was actually pretty slow. I didn't think he was great at picking up interior stunts or delayed blitzes. But, I mean, he's got great length, obviously, with that tackle background. Could, again, be a guy that takes a jump this season.
Yeah, for sure. I think the grip strength and the leverage issues were kind of a consistent theme across a lot of the guys that I watched here. And again, leverage is such a killer thing to be a consistent theme. I think that's probably why I'm a little bit lower overall on this interior class, just because so many of these guys play standing straight up, and you just cannot do that the interior, especially, I mean, even at a college level, but especially not at an NFL level. You just won't ever see guys succeed on the interior that have leverage issues. You've got to be able to get lower than your frame. So that's just something that's kind of a killer for a lot of these guys with me. But jumping into our top 5 is the guys that I'm a lot more excited about. You know, there's a lot. The day 2 of this group, or what I expect to be the day 2 in 2026, I think is going to be the strength of that draft. There's going to be a really deep, strong day 2. And jumping into our 5s, and I believe we have the same number 5. It's going to be Wendell Moe Jr. I'm pretty sure is how you say it. The former Arizona guard, now at Tennessee. So we'll be able to get Ben's. You know, it's going to be fun to see how tapped in he is to Tennessee, how he comes away on him after this upcoming season. But Wendell Moe is a guy that I think is really just kind of what I can settle for in a guard. Like when I think of my dream offensive line, I kind of want to build it like I want really athletic tackles that work in space. And I want just rocks at guard. I don't care how athletic you are. I don't care if you can move. I just want 2 really strong, powerful guards. And that's exactly what Wendell Moe is. I mean, the guy is an absolute boulder at guard. He is huge. With 335. He looked more like 340 to me. Whatever he's listed at, he's massive. And I think he's just a people mover. Like I said, I mean, you're never going to see him lose through his chest. He's never going to lose to power. Just a rock solid anchor. Really, really blows guys off the ball. Strong punch. Just like I said, a people mover. Somebody that really opens up space in run games. He's just a bulldozer. I thought the athletic limitations are rough. Like,
For sure.
When I say he's a boulder, like he's not moving anywhere. This is not a guy you want in a gap scheme working at the second level. He's never going to track down somebody in space. You probably turn an 18-wheeler faster than he does, but he's 6'2", which is 6'2" and like huge 330. That's an ideal frame for a guard for me because you've already got kind of the natural leverage of being 6'2", 6'1". You don't have to get a lot lower than your frame, so he's kind of got the athlete, the right frame for that. And along with the athletic limitations, the mirror is bad. Like he will lose to any interior guy that can flash across his face. He's never going to be able to slide with that. So that's why his ceiling's going to be capped because of that. But he's still a day 2 guy to me right now. I think just because you get him in a zone scheme that really doesn't want your guards to work in space too much and just need a guy that can move on the interior, that can move people on the interior, I think he fits that bill perfectly. I do worry, with Tennessee, and I'm not nearly as familiar with Tennessee's scheme as Ben is, so correct me if I'm out of turn here. But for an offense that's as spread out as Tennessee is, they love to get things out in space and work like that. Like just from watching Dylan Sampson last year, that run scheme. It does seem like they're going to want him to work a little bit more in space than I think is suited for him. But in pass protection, I think he's exactly what I would want in a guard. But again, Tennessee guy, I'm excited to see how he does and how we get Ben's up close opinion after this year. But yeah, how'd you feel about him?
Yeah, pretty much echo everything you said. Not the best athlete in the world, but just an absolute mountain at left guard. like you said, the scheme things. So Tennessee runs a lot of counter power where they're pulling their guards. A lot of times they'll pull their guard and tackle. Um, I didn't think he was bad at pulling, but like you said, the athletic limitations, there's definitely a ceiling as to how good of a puller you can be. I do think he's going to drop weight, though. He was 340 at Arizona. I would say that Tennessee's probably going to get him down into that 330 range. Definitely to run the tempo if they want to get back up to that speed, but also for the counters and power runs. But an absolute just rock solid pass protector. I think he's going to be the best pass protecting guard that Josh Heupel's had at Tennessee. That's been an issue for Tennessee with a couple of the guys that we've had at guard. But the hands are great. Like you said, the mirror concerns when somebody crosses his face, I think that's mostly a foot speed issue. I didn't think his feet were very fast in pass pro. So hopefully shedding some weight, he can get, some quicker feet. But super strong hands, absolute mover. I thought he was, even for a subpar athlete, I thought he was a pretty good reach blocker because his outside hand would just get latched on and the defender had no chance. Oh, yeah. And the snatch trap, when he broke it out from time to time, was really powerful.
He flashed a nice one.
For sure. But I'm really excited. Anytime Tennessee gets a good offensive lineman, I get a little pumped up. So
there we go. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how he fares, especially if he drops some weight. I think he's a guy that's got the anchor and just the natural power to kind of afford to lose a little bit of that weight. So it would be nice if you can see him strike that balance and gain a little bit of that athleticism back. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that's, a Steve Avila level athlete or anything, but somebody that can move a little better than he does right now without sacrificing too much power. Moving into our fours, my four, again, I think, do we have all the same players except for one?
Yeah.
Four of my top five is in your top five. My number 4 is your number 2, I believe, and that's going to be Conor Lew, the center out of Auburn. And he's a guy that's picked up a ton of steam through the summer process so far. Still really young. He's a true sophomore, right? Or was this past season?
He was,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll be a true junior this year. Could be a 27 guy, but I feel like there's kind of enough of a pedigree right now where I imagine he'll come out. That's kind of the general consensus right now. The feeling is that he will. But people are really, really high on him. There's a lot of people that are day 1 high on him. I think he's more of a mid to late day 2 guy for me right now. And that's just, because I have a few hang-ups with him. But overall, especially for a guy that young, there's a really, really nice skill set right now. He's very, very developed for a guy that young, too. It's always, important to see. Like we talked about with Lomu last week, where you see guys that are that technically advanced and that sound at a young age. It tells you something about their mental state, and who they are as a person and a player, to already be that developed that young. But the first thing that pops up tape is he's just a good mover, which is the first thing I look for in a center. I think you're not going to survive as a center if you can't get up to the second level and work. And I think that he can. He's a good athlete. I really was, like I said, I was impressed technically. I thought the hand placement was perfect. You could not get much better. He was always as tight as you could be with his hands, always right on the interior. The punch was sound. He was a good hand fighter overall. To me, the big hang up with him, and I'm not sure this is really something that can be improved on, honestly. One of the two things. Is the length issues to me. He has very, very short arms. That's just kind of a shorter, like 6'3", I think. Just kind of a shorter guy in general, in terms of NFL, offensive lineman standards. 6'3" is not short, but you would see like the longer defensive tackles, like Deion Walker, the couple times he went up against him, or like any of the longer defensive tackles that he went up against, really kind of were able to take advantage of that and really kind of have their way. Just because there's simple frame limitations, he's not able to get in an advantageous enough position against guys that just have that length advantage against him. You pair that with, I think there's some pretty significant play strength concerns with him. I'm not sure he's the strongest guy in the world, while also being technically sound. I think the leverage is good too. I didn't mention that earlier. But even with having the leverage, like there's just a pretty distinct lack of power to me. You don't see him blow guys off the ball in the run game like he should. I didn't think the anchor was bad. You didn't see him lose his power a lot. So it's nice you don't see the play strength concerns bleed into his pass protection, but I just don't think he's a very strong run blocker. So pairing that with the length limitations and concerns that I have, that's something that worries me with his overall ceiling and why I have him a little bit lower than most people do. But I am still high on him overall, and I think, like I mentioned, how advanced he is at a young age, it's something to be excited about. It's promising. So I'm still high on him overall, just not quite as high as some people. But Ben, you're higher on him than I am, so we'll hear your pitch.
Yeah, on the list, sure. But as a grade, I've got him in that late second round territory, so pretty close to the same as far as a late day 2. Yeah. Great athlete. I mean, that was the first thing that popped off to me. Something I do specifically with offensive linemen, but a lot of different positions is I'll go through their like the profile that they have on their team website. He started from his true freshman year. I think he started like 10 games his true freshman year, which we all know as an offensive lineman in the SEC is almost impossible with the athletes that are on all the defensive lines in this conference. But he's also a captain, which as a true sophomore is, I think, something to write home about. But the hand usage, super refined, really tight, like you said, but definitely some length concerns. Deion Walker got him a good bit. I think even a couple times against Shamar Turner was able to lock him out. I think he's got a pretty good anchor, but he could definitely add a little bit of weight. I think he's like 300 pounds right now. Maybe get up to 310, something like that. I don't think he'd lose much athleticism if he added 10 pounds. But a great job climbing to the second level. I don't think he overruns many blocks. I think his accuracy at the second level is pretty good. But anytime you've got a true sophomore with this type of athleticism, plus being a captain, shows what he is, leadership qualities, especially at center, I'm going to bet on that guy all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. The tracking at second level was a good mention too. That's another thing that I think, or that I briefly mentioned earlier, why it's so important with centers is there's very few run schemes where you're not going to ask your center to be able to. It's a baseline need from a center is for them to get up and work against second level defenders. And why a guy like another name that's picked up a lot of steam is Iapani. I don't know how to pronounce the last
I think it's like
I'd rather like not pronounce it than
I
butcher
think.
it on. Yeah, the Oregon center is picking up a lot of juices as an early day two guy right now. But it's a guy we both watched, not in any of our lists, and we'll just throw the general big names we're not going to talk about here. Like Jake Slaughter out of Florida is another guy that's a big name that we're probably not going to mention. Caden Green, the guard out of Missouri, another guy that's really, really high on a lot of people have him as the overall top interior offensive lineman. And I think that PFF had Jake Slaughter as the first overall offensive lineman, like not just interior guy coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's there's a lot of hype around those guys. We're not going to talk about them because we like to highlight the guys we like and not the ones we're a little bit lower on. So a lot of those guys, like there's just like with Caden Green, there's some major movement concerns and technique concerns that we both had. Jake Slaughter, I think it's just major athletic limitations and not the most cleaned up, technically refined guy, but he's a good run blocker. And with Iapani, the reason I mentioned is just because I think he's a center that's a little bit too big to play center, and I think it shows up when you're a 335, 340-pound center. And you ask to work against second-level defenders, like there's just an overall cap ceiling when you're that big. You're not going to be athletic enough to track down the second-level defenders. I thought he consistently overran linebackers in every game that I watched, and that's why I think Connor Lowe is so impressive athletically. Is how accurately he tracks those guys at the second level. It's what Jared Wilson did so well in the class last year, being kind of the only center. So it's something that I hold in very high regards when I'm grading centers. It's something he does extremely well, again, at such a young age. It's promising. So yeah, jumping into your four, I know you had a different four than I did. I believe it was one of the A&M guards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Armaj Reed Adams at Texas A&M. He is, like, you look at his profile, 6'5", 340. He plays exactly how you would expect that profile to play from what I saw. Not a guy that's going to be a great athlete, but creates knockback with his hands. I thought he maybe played with the flattest back of any of these guys in the class. Did have a couple times where he lost the leverage battle, but played with a flat back. I always hear offensive line coaches talk about it. Really good reach blocker. Texas A&M, again, like another guy that wasn't the greatest athlete, but pulled a lot and had some pretty punishing blocks when he got out, either kicking out or climbing up to the second level. Just a guy that's got a lot of nasty to him. Super strong hands when they land. He did fall off of blocks too much for me, though. And I think the feet definitely need to be more active in pass pro. I believe he was a transfer from Kansas in 2023, and Kansas was actually playing him at tackle. And Tennessee was actually recruiting him in the portal to play tackle, ended up at A&M, and I think that was the right decision because he's definitely an interior guy. But yeah, decently high on him, late second round grade on him. I know a lot of people like Basantis more, but I like Reed Adams more. I think that's the less popular position. Not super high on him, like overly high on him, but I did like a lot of what I saw.
Yeah, he was more of an early to mid day three guy for me. I think I have him and Basantis in generally the same range. I'm a little bit higher on Basantis. But Reed Adams, to me, I think I guess what we talked about last episode too, where he just kind of has a bad blend of issues for me as an evaluator. Where like I'm kind of his issues are my pet peeves, so I'm gonna be a little bit harsher on those. Whether that's good process or bad process, I'm not sure, but that's just how I'm gonna grade. So yeah, the flashes of strength were nice. Like when you see the play strength come through, like he's powerful. He's gonna knock guys on their back. He's got strong hands, a lot of power in his frame. But to me, he's got the two kind of killer issues on the interior too. The leverage issues would show up, and the balance issues were really bad. I thought he got out over his skis a lot, would really lunge into contact. Which again, it's like I had a problem. Like I was a lot lower on Tate Ratledge last year. Where guys that are strong players, like you have so much natural play strength, you don't need to lunge for extra power. So I'm not sure why they have that bad habit of putting their head down and just lunging into contact. It seems like that's a thing that a lot of offensive line coaches teach for some reason. But to me, I think it opens you up to so many bad leverage issues, especially against better interior rushers that you're going to see at the NFL level. So that was something that I thought he struggled with a lot. I thought you mentioned the technique. I thought could be cleaned up a little bit. The hand usage on a general basis just kind of unrefined. But again, these guys are going to be unrefined. We're still in a whole other year of tape to watch. That's to be expected. So yeah, I think I have him in a general range. I think he's a guy that could easily take a jump to being kind of an early day 2, maybe even potentially a late day 1 guy with the right jump over this next season. But yeah, it was really just the balance and leverage for me that kind of had me lower on him. Overall, I don't know if I already said it. He's my 8. But yeah, overall, I still really like the flashes from him. The play strength was nice. But yeah, overall, still liked him a good bit. I'm excited to see him over this next season. But jumping into our number 3s, and I think we have the same number 3, I believe. And that's DJ Campbell out of Texas. He was your 3 too, right? I'm not mistaken on that.
Yes, he's 3.
Okay, yeah. So same number 3 and same number 5. We're a lot more in line this week than we were last week. Not nearly as much conflict. We do have one big difference that we'll talk about in our next spot. But overall, we're pretty in line on this interior class. But DJ Campbell, I'll probably echo a lot of the things I said about Wendell Moe, kind of stylistically with guards, where I just, when I'm grading guys, I want to see just really big, strong guards that are never going to lose to power in pass protection and can just move guys off the ball in the run game. And that's exactly what DJ Campbell does. I think he's a better athlete than Moe, for sure. Still not a guy that I would say is like, he's a limited athlete. He's not a guy that's going to excel in space. But I wouldn't say it's quite to the degree that Wendell Moe's were. But incredibly strong run blocker. Just so much power in that frame. And we talked about the demeanor thing earlier with Emmanuel Pregnon. I think he's got the same thing. Like, this guy just loves putting people on the ground. There's so many highlight block finishes on DJ Campbell's tape. There's so many pancakes. Again, he has the demeanor. He wants to finish blocks. It's something that's important with offensive linemen. It doesn't get talked about enough, but it's important. And DJ Campbell has it. Incredibly strong anchor, never going to lose to a power move on the inside, never going to win through his chest. I thought he mirrored well enough for his size, for a guy that's not the best athlete in the world, has a pretty big body. I thought he mirrored well enough for his size. Really nice leverage too. Again, for a class that I mentioned earlier that has a lot of leverage problems, he's one of the guys that didn't. I thought he got a lot lower than his frame would indicate. And that's probably why you pair that with the power, and that's why he's such a successful run blocker. That's the dream combination for a good run blocker, is power and leverage, and he's got both. So a guy that I was really impressed with. He's an early second-round grade for me. I'm really, really impressed with him. The punch, I thought the punch was not quite as strong as you would think with how strong of a player he is. There's not quite as much pop in his punch as his frame and his strength would indicate. But he does a really good job of kind of staying in his base and not getting out over his skis. He's not going to overextend on those punches. He stays strong in his base. He's just a really technically sound player as well. So he was also really, really great recovery with his hands. Like I thought he was able to get his hands replaced really, really quickly when he got chopped down or swiped or whatever it was. On the interior, he does a great job getting his hands back up. And just does a good job getting back in position when he loses off the initially. Great recovery skills, I thought, with him. So yeah, overall, I'm really impressed with his top 3. All my top 3 are high second round grades. So very, very tight knit top 3 for me. But yeah, I was a big fan of him. Ben, how'd you come away on Campbell?
Yeah, Campbell I liked a lot. We talked about in the offensive tackle episode, like I brought up how Dalton Miller, the guy that we like, had tweeted out a clip of Mill Wagner and Shamar Stewart going at it and talking about, two bulls fighting over territory. That is every rep for DJ Campbell. He is just asserting his will, super strong player. Like you said, not the greatest athlete, but definitely a better athlete than Wendell Moe. Texas pulls him a lot. I've talked about it
Yeah.
a lot when we've talked about a Texas prospect. I would love their run game, and they pull him a lot. I think it was against Georgia in the conference title game. They pulled him like, I don't know, 15 times it seemed like. Um, I do think the hands and the feet need to be better mirrored in pass pro. Like you said, nobody can run through his chest. His anchor is tremendous. Um, I really like DJ Campbell, the demeanor he plays with. He's a people mover. I wish he wouldn't dip his head as much, but you sometimes get that with those over aggressive guys. Um, but I do think the hand placement, especially in the run game, is pretty refined. And I thought Quinn Ewers, like this was just another reminder that Quinn Ewers' pocket feel was just so subpar
Oh,
last
he's
year.
atrocious.
He ran DJ Campbell, I mean Kelvin Banks, all of Texas offensive linemen just into really bad quote unquote sacks. They went down on the stat sheet as sacks, but totally on Quinn Ewers on those. But yeah, he's my three, late second round grade for him. So again, kind of in that same range as you. Really, really fun player.
So yeah, we already covered his two was my four. So we already covered Connor Liu. We won't rehash that. But number two, that's where we had the big difference in our list. So again, I said we were very similar, kind of in line a lot in this class. The big one is my number two is Parker Brailsford, the center out of Alabama, and he is not in your top five. Where is he for you?
It's kind of like a cluster from 6 to 7 or from six
Yeah,
to
mine's kind of
nine.
the same way.
He ended up at 9. I like him more though than a lot of the guys that are ahead of him.
Yeah.
But I'll let you dive into
Um,
him first.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I get like there's a reason a lot of people are low too because he's like the frame is scary. Like he's 290 pounds and he's like you're stretching that. Probably might even be a little bit lighter because he's small, and that's something you're gonna that I'm a little bit more forgiving on with centers for a lot of the things I talked about earlier, where I want guys that are more athletic and can work better at the second level and in space. I'm willing to trade, some if you're going to be 290 pounds, if you're going to be a little bit lighter and a little bit less, less play strength, I can live with that. If you're going to be better at the second level, and I think Parker Brailsford is outstanding at that. I think he is a guy that is an incredible athlete, super twitchy, top end, even for being, I'll be, harsh and say 285. Even for 285, I think he's a great athlete on the interior. I think he's got really, really solid anchor for that size too. For a guy that's only 285, 290 pounds. I didn't really ever see him lose to power. He's a guy that really has just like as far as the technique of anchor goes, knowing how to redirect that power into the ground. He's just already so advanced at that. And I thought there were guys that are got 40, 50 pounds on him, extremely powerful dudes tackles that he's just rooting into the ground, just holding his ground on. That's something that really pops to me. I thought he was a really good hand fighter. His placement and punch were really technically advanced. He was a great hand fighter when he needed to be. Overall, I thought the punch timing was really nice too. He had a great job disrupting guys in the interior, knowing when to punch and when to kind of hold back, and stay in his base. Already mentioned, he's kind of a smaller stature wise too. He's only 6'2", while also being 290, so he kind of automatically wins the leverage battle. Same thing I mentioned earlier. Does a great job getting even lower than 6'2". Even for being that small naturally, he gets even lower than that. Winning the leverage battle against those guys. Keeps his head up through contact too. I mentioned the lunging problems with Reed Adams. That's something you would expect from a guy that's smaller, trying to get every ounce of power he can. I don't think he has a problem with that. I think he does a great job keeping his head up. Really good run blocker overall too. He's not a guy that when I say good run blocker, I didn't really ever see him lose as a run blocker, but you also didn't see many dominant wins from him just because of that size. Like at the first level, I should say too. You don't see a lot of first level pop from him as a run blocker. He's not really going to move guys off the ball, but I also didn't really see him lose. But the second level is where he makes his money as a center. I mean, he's going to get. I mentioned how good of an athlete he is. He gets up to the second level so quickly. He's such a good tracker in space. You don't really ever see him lose linebackers in space. Never overruns them, like we mentioned with Connor Liu. Another thing, the guy that I think he's just so good at. Very, very Jared Wilson-esque to me with Brailsford. He's a little bit smaller, but stylistically, I think they're very similar. I think he's great. In space, just really, really technically advanced. I didn't see a lot of problems with Brailsford. The frame is the biggest thing you write home with, but I thought that the strength was a lot better than the frame would indicate. So for me, I think he's really advanced in all the levels that I care about as a center. He's an early second round grade for me, and I'm really high on him. But I would like to hear another position for somebody a little bit lower on him.
Yeah, really, I agree with all of your points about Brailsford. The way I do my grading, it's numerical, which can definitely be more spotty in the summer than it is in the fall. He's a guy that I want to dive into more tape on because I so badly want to raise the grade on him because I did like a lot of the tape that I saw. It was just the size that really scared me. I think he's the best athlete in this class. I don't think it's
I
particularly
agree.
close. Connor Lew's a great athlete, but Parker Brailsford's a whole nother tier. I don't really care that he's just 285. If you can move like that on the offensive line, I mean, you're an excellent athlete. Like you said, the hands really technically refined. Um, I thought he did a great job at when guys would punch, he'd replace his hands well. Um, I think for a guy that is listed at 290, I don't think he's quite weighs that much. But he was able to dig in, and I think a lot of that has to do with him being 6'2". He's shorter than some of these defensive tackles that are coming in, so
Yep.
he naturally wins the leverage battle. And I think he does a good job at really flexing his back and digging in with his heels and really able to bow up against some power rushers. With that size, I did think the arm length was subpar.
Yep.
But really easy mover. I mean, I thought Lou was the best at getting to the second level, but Brailsford's right there. Um, I mean, his accuracy at the second level is really good. And a lot of the guys that he played, I mean, athletic linebackers like Demetrius Knight, a couple of the Michigan guys that we might dive into when we get in our linebacker episode, those are athletic dudes, and he's mirroring them perfectly. Really good puller. There was a sequence against South Carolina where Alabama pulled him on three straight
Yeah.
plays, and it was three productive plays. Um, but again, like I mentioned before, I want to dive into more tape on him because if I didn't have a numerical grading system, he'd probably be like an early third round grade for me. Really fun player. I just don't know how the NFL is going to feel about the size. Maybe he puts on some weight this year. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. He's another guy I'm excited to keep an eye on. And that whole Bama offensive line is fun to watch too because we're going to see. We have the same number one on the same offensive line right next to Parker Brailsford. But also in that Michigan game, man, I know there's a lot of people that are in this camp of like non-playoff bowl games can't really be used for evaluating. I understand the view of that, but like at the same time, the Michigan defensive line was so good that I have to watch him against it. He dropped the hammer on Rayshon Benny, man. Like there's a rep. I think I tweeted it out. I'll put it in the cut up. We run his B-roll on here to talk about him. But man, he blasted Rayshon Benny. It was one of my favorite reps, probably my favorite rep of this group of centers that we watched. So much fun to just watch. A guy that's that small can still generate like a lot of power when he's in the right position. But yeah, so moving on to our number one, we're going to talk about his running mate, Jaden Roberts, is both our number one, the guard out of Alabama. And I've taken the lead on a lot of this, so I'm going to kick it over to you to give the elevator pitch on Jaden Roberts.
Jaden Roberts was so much fun to watch. It was kind of funny seeing him and Tyler Booker stand next to Parker Brailsford. That might have made the size concerns with Brailsford just a little bit overblown because they're both just absolutely humongous human beings. I think Roberts listed at like 6'5", 320.
Like 500
Um,
pounds, yeah.
and it's a good 320 pounds. But I mean, the Georgia tape was really fun. I mean, he's out there moving guys. Probably my favorite rep of this entire offensive line group, even including the tackles. He gets out. I think he's blocking Tyrone Ingram Dawkins, and he pancakes him, and then he somersaults over him. And then trying to get back up, he does another somersault, and he's just out there having fun, which I love to see it from offensive linemen.
And
I
also
thought it
one
was
arming Michael Williams in the same
Oh
play.
yeah, that was another impressive rep. Anytime you can one arm a guy that's that powerful, really stands out. Like the length. I mean, I think he's got the length of a tackle playing there
Oh,
on the
absolutely, he
interior.
does. Yeah.
Um, the anchor is fantastic. Um, I think the biggest thing that you're going to touch on is the balance issues. Definitely some balance issues for sure. I don't think it's as big of a problem on the interior as it is at tackle, but it definitely is a problem. Um, like he gets overextended, he can dip his head at times. But I thought for the most part, when he's able to play with good technique, get his hands landed, really nobody won through his chest. Again, Alabama pulled him a lot. Um, Funnily enough, I thought with him it was more like same side pulls. They didn't really pull him back across the formation. It was
Yeah.
more on toss
Mhm.
plays and stuff like that. But super strong. Anytime you've got an offensive lineman that's at least a decent athlete that's really strong and has length like this, that's pretty much an easy first round grade for me, especially with the dominant flashes that you see in the run game.
Yeah, for sure. Like you mentioned, you nailed it with the balance issues. That's the only thing keeping him from a first round grade for me. He was a guy that I've been excited to watch ever since I was watching Booker the first time around because I just kept my eyes kept darting to Jaden Roberts first time around watching this line. Um, the rep I always point to, along with the Georgia game, you go to the Tennessee game and the third play, within the first three plays, he turns Omar Norman Lott sideways and just pile drives him into his own three tech, or the other three tech. It's so much fun to watch this guy. One of, if not the strongest player that I've just ever watched. Like, he is so damn strong all the time. There's nobody he can't move in the run game, like you mentioned. Nobody wins through his chest. If he can clean up the balance issues and stop lunging, because again, it's so frustrating to me. These guys that don't need help power wise, like he's, again, like I just mentioned, possibly the strongest player I've ever evaluated. He's the last guy in the world that needs to put his head down and lunge into contact. So if he would just do a better job of keeping his head up and staying on his skis and not getting overextended, and letting guys abuse those balance issues, he could be a solid mid first round guard. Like, he's really, really good. I thought the technique overall was pretty polished too. The hand usage for a guy that strong, you expect it to be kind of raw, but I thought he was good overall, very developed too. So yeah, overall just an incredibly strong guard. Not a guy for his size. I thought he was a good enough athlete, and I thought he worked good enough in space, like you mentioned as a polar too. But still, probably not a guy you want living in space. Just a guy you can work there supplementally. But yeah, again, overall, just such an advanced player. I really don't have any gripes with him beyond the balance issues. So strong, so dominant, so many highlight finishes too. Like, I think our guy James Foster tweeted about this earlier today. But the combo of him and Proctor and Booker on that line, like, just three of the strongest offensive linemen that I've ever watched. It's just nonstop pancakes across that entire Bama offensive line. So much fun to watch. I can't wait to see that interior duo, him and Brailsford, in this upcoming season. We're not as high on Proctor. We talked about that last, or you are. I'm not. Talked about it in that last episode. I've got some reserves with him, but overall, like I mentioned, just so many fun highlight finishes from that offensive line. A lot of great coaching too. Clearly, we're going to see. Hopefully, they can clean up some of the few issues that he does have. But again, overall, very, very high on him. Definitely my favorite watch of this guard class. And yeah, I think that's going to about do it for our quick coverage of this interior offensive line class. Overall, like I mentioned, I don't have a first round grade. Your only one, I believe, was Jaden Roberts. So we're not overly high on it. But again, a lot of these guys can take jumps, especially how young a lot of this class is. Could see some really, really big guys emerge during this year. So really excited to see where it ends up. The tackle class is really good. So this offensive line class as a whole could end up being much better than last year, in my opinion. I like it. Next week, we're diving back into skill positions, getting away from the church talk, covering receivers. This has got to be probably the second most anticipated episode behind quarterbacks, right? Maybe behind offensive tackles too. People love receivers. I feel like receivers kind of always ends up being the bigger summer scouting episodes too. Like NFLSC, I think, just did their receiver episode, and that ended up being their biggest one last year too. So it's always fun to look at the skill group. Everybody loves receivers. A lot of polarity on this group too. Some people think it's even worse than last year's. I know you're really high on it because you've already done way more work than I have. I'm still behind, of course, like always. So I have a lot of film to grind. But yeah, I'm excited to dive into that receiver class. Be sure to tune in. We'll talk about Jordan Tyson and a bunch of other super cool names. A lot of transfers too. So some new situations for those guys. Really excited to dive in that class. But yeah, be sure to tune in next week. We talk about it. We will see you guys next time.